Hi, I'm Talal Lasmani, and welcome to another segment of Mawaheb Chats. Today we're here with Majid Al Ansari, Variety's Arab Filmmaker of the Year and the director of the film Zinzana. We're also here with two of Arab Film Studio's finalists.
I'm Mohammed Al Hamadi, director for AFS Narrative 2015. I was the finalist and my short film, which is named The Last Interview.
I'm Maryam Zaabi. I'm a visual communication graduate and I directed my AFS film, which is called Mayhuda.
So Majid is the director of the film Zinzana, and Zinzana is known as a genre film. Now, so first, when you Google genre film to understand what it is, it's hard because Google takes words in no particular order, so you get film genre. So could you explain to us what the difference is between film genre and genre film?
Genre represents, it's not a genre as filmmakers or as the technical film meaning is where you have drama or thriller or that.
Comedy.
Genre films is a name that they gave films, so basically that was in back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, that Roger Corman film, the B-movie horror or thrillers, or the monster films. They used to have drive-through theaters, like zombie films and so on. So that's a label that they gave those films, the B-movies, are genre films.
So what makes Zinzana a genre film?
It has all the elements that makes it genre. So it has a bit of, it's neo-noir, there's a lot of blood, and that's a signature for genre films. There's absurd characters. One thing about genre films that I love personally is the suspense of belief is really high. It's really suspense itself from reality, and that's what really kind of makes genre films very kind of specific and identifies it.
Was Zinzana set in the present time?
It was no, it wasn't, and that's something that we chose because of where we wanted to set the story and just to make it, give it a bit of suspense of belief of our certain market. If this was done in the US, it would have been much more different.
And I've had conversations with people about the market, the Arab film market, cinema market, and the distribution, and what kind of films work here and what don't. And it was a lot more of a calculated conversation. I don't think that's a conversation you are interested in. I think you would do what you like and hope that by being so passionate about it, people will like it too.
Not necessarily. Actually, when I was doing Zinzana, I always had the audience in mind. And I love, because at the end of the day, I'm not a kind of filmmaker that would do a film just for Majid. I would do it for the audience, because what's the use of me doing a film just for Majid? To me, at the end of the day, the Zinzana as a script, when I first read it, and we all first read it, we loved it because of the how it was written, and it was beautiful, it was entertaining. And that's something that I really had to always had to put in my mind when I was making it. Every scene, I always thought, I'm like, how are the people going to react to the scene and how I want them to react to the scene. So there was a lot of calculation done for the audience.
Do you believe that there's a certain genre that works better in our region?
Honestly, we're still discovering it. I don't think there's a straight answer to it because there aren't enough films that came out that actually tackles the market and sees what the audience wants.
How did you find the script? What was it about the script that interested you in, and how did you find it?
Essentially, we got the script from a great website called The Blacklist, and at that time I was working for Imagination full time, and part of my job was to find scripts and share it with the team and read it. And there was not a lot of scripts coming from the country that we loved as far as structure and as far as it needed a lot of work. So we went to that website and we found a lot of scripts, and I think Zinzana, which is the original title, Around the Cage, was the 20th script we read, and just loved it. I loved that the way the writers have set this story is all about the characters, and it's all about this antagonist and the protagonist, and you're living their kind of, them crashing each other for an hour and a half, and I love that about it. And where it was set, as far as it's not set in any specific location, it was definitely kind of a genre world that they've created. When I mean genre, that just kind of takes that genre world that we have as far as filmmaking world, and they just kind of took that and made that the umbrella of where to set the story in, and I love that about it.
When you had that movie and you were trying to package it, was it how did everybody else react to seeing a script that was very different? How did actors, for example, look at this, and did they?
A lot of actors were scared.
Okay.
We had a lot of rejection. Essentially, when we first started Zinzana, we wanted to make it an Emirati film. So we're like, okay, let's go find the best Emirati actors and do it. And unfortunately, we couldn't find. Of course, Dabban being Dabban and Talal's character, it's a very character-driven film. It's a performance-driven film. So you need the actors will break it or make it. So whether we didn't find the right actors to fit or actors didn't really go for it, and not only the UAE, even the Khalij, I think we've got rejected from about 15 actors for the lead role.
Because the film was very different?
It was, yeah. It's so different that like, and a lot of people didn't believe it, including like some people that acted the film, like Ali Jabri and so on. We always had this discussion. He's like, "Are you sure you want to do this film?" Like,
but he was there, and he was there to
support me because we know we go way back, and he really wanted to come and support me for my first film, and that's why he did it. He didn't do it because he loved the role. He's like, "Majid, I'm there for you, and I love him for it." And I really believe he's the best for the role. And that's why I told him the film. Just trust me and come for this role.
What did he think after he saw it?
He changed. He's like, "Wow, okay." He's like, "And now I get it. Now I get why you were trying." Because from script and translating to the screen, a lot of people didn't see it, including some of the biggest producers in the Arab world, which we shared with just to hear their opinion. And a lot of people said, "Yeah, I think this will be a big failure." And in their own way, they didn't say that specifically, but that's what they kind of.
And what about the script was something that you think brought everybody together? What was something that people did believe in?
I would like to thank Imagination first and foremost because having Mohammed Mubarak and Michael Garan and Ben Ross heading this, and they believe in a movement as far as trying something different and let's test this market, because we always say let's go test this market and we do the exact same traditional thing. But when the Imagination guys said let's go test this market, it's like let's go far out and test it, and that's what the whole experiment with Zinzana was. It's like, let's go out and let's do something different. And that's what Zinzana was, and something different. And I was lucky because that's my job. I love this. I love Roger Corman. I love Rod Serling. And I love a lot of the B movies that was done back in the 50s and 60s and 70s that, when I came into it, I'm just like, all right, I knew how to do it.
Now, so you found the script yourself. You were able to convince people this was the movie to do, despite all the odds. So there are always challenges, and I've had people ask, when am I ready to make a feature film? They've not asked me; they've asked guests on Mawaheb Chat, saying, I've made short films. When am I ready to move on to feature films? What do you say to that?
I always ask myself that same question.
So I think you answered it though at one point.
Yeah, I did. Well, I was pushed into it, and I love that I was pushed into it because that just made me do it. I think a friend of mine, because I did my first short, and I was always thinking about, let me go do another short, And it actually was a cinematographer, Pablo Arish, who was a cinematographer for my first short, Intruder. He came to me, he's like, why would you go waste your time on another short? Just jump into feature. And do it small budget, whatever it is, just do it. Have 100,000 dirhams and jump into a feature.
Yeah.
And that's very different than having like Imagination or a private investor. Then you're definitely much more riskier. You're definitely... and as a first feature, definitely you're even second or third. You just don't want to. You want to make sure that they're financing your film. You want to make sure that you deliver something that they love, because they're paying for it.
Do you have more freedom when you make a movie independently?
I wouldn't say that because I think the work environment that I had with Imagination was very amazing because they gave me the freedom that I wanted. And as I said, when Mohammed Mubarak and Michael Garan and Ben said jump, they meant it. So they knew I was the right guy for this job, and I jumped, and they told me jump. And that's what I loved about it, is that Imagination isn't as a studio per se, where they're like, hey, where's the money and where's that? No, they work with you and they help you develop what you have there.
I think a simple answer to the same question, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you're able to secure financing for a film, then you're probably ready because other people have believed in you as well.
100%.
Well, great. I mean, I need, you guys are here to ask Majid questions, or what kind of advice do you want?
I was always facing problem with choosing good script for my short movies. So how do you come by this story? How the story become in your mind?
Honestly, I was in the same scenario. I was in the exact same scenario as far as knowing what story. Even The Intruder was based on a Twilight Zone episode. I'm not a writer, so I love working on other people's written scripts because I feel like there's so many talented people out there that are more talented than me in writing. But my talent lies in more of directing and telling the story and a different version of what they have, and using their bases and using their writing as a base of what I'm going to direct and how I'm going to tell the story. But also that reading a lot of scripts is good for you because you start getting to understand structure, character development, and so on. And by that, you start knowing and understanding what's a good film or not, and what's a good script or not. And that's more important, and see if it's good or not.
So, what's the most difficult things that you faced in your movie?
Psychologically preparing myself for the film is the biggest kind of task, because going into a film is a lot of psychological work, because you're going to spend a year and a half of your life in it, and at one point, I was a 27-year-old at that time, and everyone in the crew was older than me. So it was a lot of preparation and a lot of kind of psychological work I've done, and like just to make sure that when I'm on set, I'm calm, I know how to direct, people could rely on me, and that I have an answer to every question that puts out, because you're going to be working with 70, 80 people, and you need to make sure, and you're going to be working with 8 to 10 departments. You need to make sure you have an answer for everything, and you know, at the end of the day, you need to also understand the work that you have with the producers. And I had a great producer, Lami Yassine, and of course with the guidance with Ben Ross, who was guiding me on set and hands-on. I had a good team around me that really helped me excel.
Could you please tell us how much of your life has been dedicated to this movie? Just so it's, you know, people know that it's not a quick weekend to go make a film. How much of your life has been taken up by
I'd say I was full-time, 12-hour days out of production for a year, and then 5 months of just hectic. It could go up to 18 hours, 17 to 20 hours a day, prepping and production. So it was
a year and 5 months.
A year and 5 months, 7 months, but then, you know, things linger and
So
until today,
there's
it's
still
still on and
some things
off, but not as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big commitment.
So it's a huge commitment.
Finding the right project for you.
Oh yeah.
And knowing that you're ready for it is a big.
Yeah, because
it makes it a little more challenging to sort of take that leap, I guess.
Yeah, it is, and then that's what goes back to psychological work. You really need to work on how you feel at that moment, because when you go to set, if you lose it, you lost. So I didn't lose it, because you as a director, that's your. A lot of people misunderstand, and especially young students, as far as what a director is. Your main job, and that's something actually I researched, and I figured it out. Funny enough, I shouldn't say this, but 2 months before I directed, I actually shot.
Director, the guy with the hat.
But 2 months before it, I was watching an interview, and of course I was being very scared about getting into Zinzana and doing. So I was searching a lot of directors and comments and so on, and I fell upon an interview with Tarantino, and I can't remember what show it was. And he was telling his story of he was feeling the same way I was feeling at that moment, as far as being scared jumping into a feature, and how you should do it, and how you should have it a beautiful picture, and how you should do that, and you should do that. And he asked Terry Gilliam, and he tells a story about him and Terry Gilliam as far as what you should do as a director. And he looked at him straight up. He's like, your job is one thing and one thing only, is to communicate. That's your job. You're not going to hold the camera, and you're not going to dictate what shot it is. You need to communicate to your DP or camera operator of how you want this camera to move and where to move and why. So it's all about communication. And frankly, if you're not good at communication, you're going to have a tough time directing a film.
Can I ask you to do one thing?
Well,
there was an impression everybody did of you when you were trying to communicate where you wanted the camera to be and how you wanted it to. Could you please do it?
That's a secret.
No, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. Come on. Do you guys want to see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, actually, I think someone else should say it. Not me.
No, but you know, we have the real guy right here. So tell me how you want your shot.
Well, when I used to direct Saleh and Ali, and I studied music, so I'd make a lot of music sounds. So I'd go, and they would sit there and look at me. They're like, "What the hell is he going to say?" Like, "Yeah, we got you. I'm like, "You got me. All right."
They probably didn't.
They had no clue what I was saying. I'd walk in, and literally for 5 minutes, I'll just be saying, "Okay."
And the whole,
yeah,
you know.
the whole thing. Yeah.
So that's you communicating.
Yeah,
you found your means.
That wasn't good, but then I would go back and say it properly.
But hey, that's probably the secret of why you're Arab Filmmaker of the Year.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
So what would you like to ask?
For me right now, like my concern, is I don't have a job. Okay, I'm يعني I've graduated from visual communication and I want to do something in film, but it's so hard to be self-motivated to do something when everyone around me is like, hey, find a job, go work in a bank, something like that.
Happened to me.
So, and when I go shoot something, it's always like you're wasting your time. So I don't know, how do you find self-motivation?
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. Actually, I think all of us went through this. I remember I'll tell you my story. When I came, I went to study music essentially. I was in California and then I went to Leeds. For 3 years or 4 years I was there, I was on a scholarship, the Ba'tha. But no one knew I was doing music. So when I came back, because they knew I was doing music, so they sent me back. My parents still didn't know I was doing music and arts. I actually did music and film, so it was a mixture. And so when they found out, they were like, what the hell are you doing? And there was discourse of kicking me out of the house because I lied to them because they thought I was doing business or HR or whatever they thought I was doing, because I would change it up. Like 1 year I'm in HR, another year I'm in business development, another year. But it took me a long time to really have them believe me, because they thought, even when I got back, they're like, oh, you have to go back to school. And I said, okay, but I actually went and interned. I didn't go back to school. I truly believe that film is my thing. But I had a very, very hard time for, I think, 2-3 years until like City of Life came out. I always tell the story. When City of Life came out, I remember watching that film and I'm like, wow, this film is really good. I need to make sure my family goes and watches it. Maybe they could change their mind. And that's what happened. I took my mom to the cinema and she looked at me, she's like, what are we doing? Arabic film, Emirati film, who knows? Let's go watch Denzel, let's go watch some good films. So she watched the film. By the end of the film, she literally enjoyed that piece. And then literally I remember having her having a tear in her eyes, saying, I love this film. And then she points at the screen and she said to me, she's like, oh, I want to see your name up there. So she started believing in the cinema movement.
That was your inciting incident.
Exactly, and that's kind of what things became easier for me. But of course, being a freelancer, to be very honest, you're gonna have, starting film, you're gonna have to start freelancer, and I suggest you start as a freelancer and a trainee and an intern, because you need to learn what filmmaking really is. You really need to work your way up. You really need to.
What was the first, and I know this, but tell everybody, what your first ever job on a feature was?
On a feature, it was Sea Shadow. I was a location trainee assistant. I had no clue what that was. The kid was like, oh, you're going to be a location. They just wanted, I'm an Emirati, and I was part of this Mawaheb. Actually, I was in Mawaheb. I was the first Mawaheb guy. I know this stuff. So I was the first Mawaheb participant. And I remember I came, they took me to the Mawaheb Janahi set, and I met the producers. I was scared. I was, I think, 21 years old.
Who was the producer?
It was Onam Yassin, my producer. So my producer in Zinzana gave me my first job as a trainee, and
I went in. Up there?
Yeah, that's good. And I went in, and they told me location. I had no clue what location is. I'm like, what's this? Okay, whatever. I'll say yes, because you have to say yes as an intern. You're not gonna salatin. And I started this, and I remember the first task I had it was in Ras Al Khaimah, and he took me to this neighborhood. It was old school Emirati neighborhood. And he looked at me, he's like, get out. I'm like, okay. I get out. And he comes out, he's like, I need you to knock on that door. I need you, and they're going to come out. And I need you to convince them to leave their house for 3 weeks, and we're going to take it over and film it, and we're going to give them a hotel. And I looked at him, I'm like, he's like, you're being serious? I thought it was a joke. He's like, no, I'm being serious. You got to go do it now. And I knocked on the door. And I haven't heard a door smash on my face as loud as, and that's what part of it was. And I remember by the end of it, I was dealing with all of Ras Al Khaimah police, and dealing with closing roads, and you just learn, and you need those situations that just makes you stronger and a stronger character. Sitting in an office to become a filmmaker is not necessarily a good thing. It is a definite thing that you would want to come back to, but in the beginning you just need to get grounded. People need to beat you down. You need to understand that it's a yes sir industry, so you need to learn your way up, work your way up. And my advice to you is just put your head down and do what you have to do. And really, at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to tell you, you're not going to be able to do it. If you really believe in yourself, go out and do it. And I think you should go out and shoot a short. And if you want to go shoot a feature, go out and shoot a feature. A lot of people that are big today, just because they went out. Spielberg had to jump over the studio's fence. like 3-4 times until he broke a foot falling down or broke something, that someone noticed him and took him in, and then he got his first job. So Spielberg had to do that to get his first job, and that's what really this is in a nutshell. You kind of learn from this that filmmaking to really break in is very hard, but you need to push yourself and you need to ask yourself that you could do it, and if you could, just push yourself and do it. And no matter what people tell you,
Well, Majid, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for answering everybody's questions.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure. See you guys next time.
All right, thank you.